We live in an age where silence has become suspicious, where absence is often mistaken for emptiness. Every day, millions of people wake up and instinctively reach for their phones, documenting their lives in fragments, meals, moods, moments, milestones. We've learned to announce our existence through posts, stories, and updates. And yet, quietly, there exists another group. People who rarely post. People who watch but don't perform. People who scroll but remain unseen. And the question everyone asks is simple, but loaded. Why? Why would someone choose not to post in a world that rewards visibility? Why remain quiet when attention is currency? At first glance, it's easy to label these people as shy, introverted, antisocial, or disconnected. But psychology tells us something far more complex and far more human is happening beneath the surface. Silence, for many of these individuals, is not absence. It is intention. For some people, not posting is an act of control. In a digital environment that constantly demands access to your thoughts, emotions, and experiences, choosing not to share becomes a way of protecting the self. Social media subtly trains us to externalize our identity, to define who we are based on how others respond to us. Likes, comments, views, reactions, they become mirrors. But the people who don't post often resist that mirror. They don't want to know who they are through reflection. They want to know who they are through experience. Psychologists describe this as internal identity orientation, when a person's sense of self is shaped more by inner values than by external approval. These individuals don't feel the need to narrate their lives because they are too busy living them. Their silence isn't insecurity, it's self-containment. In fact, research consistently shows that people who post less frequently often score higher in traits like introspection, emotional regulation, and self-restraint. They think before they react. They feel deeply before they express. And because of that, they're often more aware of how easily moments lose meaning once they're turned into content. Think about how often experiences are interrupted by the urge to capture them. The sunset isn't just a sunset anymore, it's potential engagement. The meal isn't just food, it's aesthetic value. The trip isn't just memory, it's proof. People who don't post have often reached a point where that translation feels exhausting. They no longer want to live life twice, once in reality and once for the screen. There's also an emotional cost to constant visibility that most people don't talk about. Every post is a subtle performance. Every caption is a form of self-presentation. And over time, this creates what psychologists call self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness that you are being watched, evaluated, and interpreted, even in your absence. For some people, this pressure becomes overwhelming. They start asking themselves questions that slowly drain authenticity. Is this interesting enough? Will people care? What if this is misunderstood? What if no one reacts? Eventually, the fear of being misjudged outweighs the desire to be seen. So they withdraw, not because they don't want connection, but because superficial visibility feels too expensive. But silence doesn't mean emptiness. Some of the quietest people online are the loudest thinkers offline. Their minds are full. Their inner worlds are rich. They don't post because they don't feel the need to compress complex emotions into captions or reduce meaningful experiences into pixels. They understand something many don't. Not everything that matters needs an audience. There is a psychological concept called psychological ownership, the feeling that something belongs deeply to you. A thought, a memory, a moment. When you share it publicly, that ownership subtly shifts. The moment becomes open to interpretation, judgment, and even distortion. For people who don't post, privacy is not secrecy. It's preservation. They want their memories to remain untouched by algorithms and opinions. Often, the decision to stop posting doesn't happen suddenly. It comes after burnout. After years of sharing, performing, explaining. After realizing that the more you post, the more pressure there is to keep up an image. Happiness has to look happier. Success has to look bigger. Pain has to be packaged attractively. And one day, something breaks. The person realizes they're no longer living, they're maintaining a narrative. So they disappear quietly. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. And here's what many people misunderstand. Not posting does not mean not caring. It often means caring too much. Caring about meaning.
About depth.
About protecting what's sacred. These individuals value presence over perception. They choose to experience life fully rather than document it endlessly. But silence online doesn't always come from peace. Sometimes it comes from fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of rejection. Fear of being misunderstood. Social media has amplified our sensitivity to evaluation. A post can be ignored, misread,
mocked.
And for people who already feel deeply, that risk can feel unbearable. So they choose safety over exposure. Not because they lack confidence, but because they don't want their inner world handled carelessly. Ironically, this makes them misunderstood. Others may assume they're distant, cold, or disconnected. But in reality, they are often the most emotionally aware people in the room. They observe more than they speak. They listen more than they project. And they understand something fundamental. Being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. There is also a philosophical layer to this silence. In a culture that constantly says, "Look at me," choosing not to post becomes a form of rebellion. It's a way of saying, "I exist beyond your perception." It's an assertion of autonomy in a system designed to monetize attention. When you don't post, you step outside the dopamine loop, the cycle of validation that trains the brain to crave approval. Every like releases dopamine. Every comment reinforces behavior. Over time, we begin to associate value with visibility. But people who resist this loop often have what psychologists call a strong internal locus of control. Their happiness doesn't depend on external applause. Their worth isn't measured in engagement. Studies show that individuals who take long breaks from social media often experience increased emotional stability, reduced anxiety, and greater life satisfaction.
Why?
Because when your identity isn't constantly being mirrored back to you, it becomes solid. You stop editing yourself. You stop performing progress. You start existing fully, messy, complex, and real. And something else happens when you stop posting. You rediscover real connection. You notice who checks on you without updates, who remembers you without reminders, who reaches out without needing proof. Relationships become quieter, but deeper,
Heavier.
more honest. You stop chasing digital closeness and start building real intimacy. People who don't post often value conversations over comments, presence over performance, shared silence over shared content. They save their stories for moments that matter, across tables, not across screens. And here's the paradox. The people who live most quietly often feel life most intensely. They notice details others miss. The shift in tone during a conversation, the way light changes a room, the pause before someone speaks. They are present, and presence is rare in a world addicted to attention. But presence is often misunderstood. Silence gets labeled as mystery, distance, coldness. Yet beneath it is depth, a calm confidence that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself to be understood. From knowing that not everyone needs access to you. There is power in being selective with visibility. Because once something becomes public, it stops being purely yours. It belongs to interpretation,
To trends.
to judgment. And some parts of life are too sacred for that. So when you see someone who doesn't post, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're healing. Maybe they're protecting something fragile. Maybe they've learned that privacy is not loneliness, it's intimacy with the self. Because when you stop broadcasting every thought, you start hearing your own again. You reconnect with the parts of you that got lost in the noise. Your inner compass, your quiet desires, your unspoken truths. And that's something deeply human in a digital age. In the end, we weren't meant to be performances. We were meant to be people. And the people who don't post, they remind us of that. With their silence, their depth, their beautifully unfiltered invisibility.